All right, in this video we are going to take some other things that we've already talked about with solving, verbal expressions, and graphing, and kind of put them all together. So here we have a verbal expression. We're going to write that as an algebraic inequality, and then solve and graph. So here we have 2 times a number is at least 7. So when we're dealing with inequalities and written expressions or sentences, you're going to have greater than, less than, at least, no more than. There's a lot of different ways that it can be worded. So let's break this down. 2 times a number, right? So that's giving me my first term, and I'll just use x. 2 times a number is at least 7. So I know the other side of my equation or inequality is going to be 7. If it's at least, I know it's an inequality. It's not going to be an equation. So 2x must be at least 7. So that means it's going to be greater than 7. If it's at least 7, it could be equal to, right? If it said 2 times the number is more than 7, then it would have to be greater. It couldn't be equal to. But if 2 times the number is at least 7, then it could be equal to 7. Okay? So here's our inequality, 2x greater than or equal to 7. Now we're going to go ahead and solve. So the only step here, this one is pretty simple. We just have to divide by 2. And I can leave it as 7 over 2. That's a pretty easy decimal, so I'll write 3.5 because we're going to graph it, and decimals are usually going to be easier when we're graphing than fraction. So I always want to have 0 on here. If it's a really big number, you don't need 0. And you don't have to go by ones, but because we're dealing with smaller numbers here, I will go by 1. Okay. And I don't know if I want to really get into marking every half of a number on my number line. I want it to be fairly simple, easy to read, so I'm just going to use these positive integers here. So since I have 3.5, you could label that specific spot on your number line. Right? Like anytime we graph something, if it's not a whole number, or if it's not clear what the point or part of the graph represents, it's good to just label that specific point. So 3.5, but in general, you can probably just kind of guess, or not guess, but give a pretty good approximation of where that value is going to be. So I put a circle right there, halfway between 3 and 4. X is greater than 3.5, so I shade to the right, or equal to, so I fill it in. Okay, so there's your inequality from the verbal expression, your solution, and graphing on a number line.